Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld Anomaly Sea Ice Challenge with the transhumanist Paragons of Pandroth. Last time we left off well on our path to fully complete the entity codex, a corrupted obelisk landed on the sea ice and down in a pit gate that we summoned we found a harbinger seed, although one that we sadly cannot plant anywhere, neither on the sea ice nor in the pit gate itself. The episode then ended with the arrival of a mech cluster centered around a psychic suppressor, and with that suppressor reducing all of our females' consciousness to a maximum of 50%, I'd say we need to do something about this quickly. So let's get to it. We're beginning by drawing in some fleshbeasts. With Elpis currently death resting, Maniac will spearhead this, and we are also getting our very own mechanoid in place, Diabolus Cursebane. The Ghoul Police is also standing by over on the left flank, and so is everyone not involved in the ritual. As soon as the ritual is then complete, we fire Cursebane's Hellsphere cannon. One of the targets here is the mech high shield, and perhaps we can take out the turret as well. And there we go, just as the first flesh beasts crawl out of the ground, the shot connects, and so the carnage begins. The goal here is to lock as many of the mechs into melee combat as possible. The flesh beasts are hopefully capable of doing that just by sheer numbers, while our ghouls will of course draw plenty of attention too. Now Cursebane's Hellsphere cannon is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. Unfortunately though, amidst all the chaos, I somewhat overlooked that a few mechs have somehow made it into our base, probably as part of a reinforcement drop pod. They have already downed Shireen and killed a lifter bot Cruxel, but Maniac is now moving in to hopefully take care of them. The mechanoid situation outside the base, meanwhile, is looking decent. We only have a handful of centipedes left, although the mechanoids inside the base unfortunately cause one more robot casualty. Still, I have to say, the Hellsphere cannon is just a wonderful weapon. At least until Ghoul Midnight goes down and Cursebane's next shot sets his body on fire. And I think it took me just a little bit too long to realize the severity of this, which is why Cursebane keeps targeting the area where Midnight's body is laying, all the while I was already celebrating our victory here. Eventually then, not much remains of the enemy mech cluster. Maniac has taken care of every mech inside the base. We should at this point probably also stop our mortar fire, but after our ghouls throw just a few more punches, the fight is won. Midnight, however, has perished, and for good. As you can see, nothing is left of the ghoul's body, and so even a resurrector serum will not bring him back. So we say rest, or rather arrest in peace to Ghoul Midnight. Midnight and Jay, together they coined the term Ghoul Police. Now one of them has sadly died while on duty. Randy meanwhile rewards us with a uranium meteorite, which brings me to Tunneler Mulch Butler, still busy in the pit gate, currently mining steel and thankfully pretty far away from the Dreadmelt. Now, after capturing the mechanoid's unstable power cell, it's time for some first aid. That does not only mean mechanoid repair and revival, but in a short moment also a new leg for Shireen. First of all though, Nightshade throws a party to celebrate our victory, a victory that is sadly very short-lived, as a second mech cluster with yet another psychic suppressor has just dropped nearby. Yes, sometimes Randy can be a cruel bastard, but let's have our pawns celebrate for at least a little bit before we take care of this. Shireen's new leg then is quickly installed by Nightshade, just as a solar flare hits the sea ice. So, no more heating, no more hydroponics, and most of our crafting and research has also been shut down, and this also means that Elpis's death rest will last for a little while longer, as the two accelerators are currently not functional. Well, at least this gives our colonists some time for cleanup and repairs, and luckily the power is back on just a few hours later. Elpis also rises from his death-resting casket almost immediately, while we watch as Corinna is being chased by a tough spike, one that apparently survived the mech cluster and recovered, but not enough to withstand more than a single volley from Volek and Kojiro. So then, time to load up a transport pod, and for this one we'll just send Elpis and Maniac, together with that harbinger seed we acquired last time. We're going to send the two of them over to that other mech cluster, which is not on a sea ice but on an ice sheet tile, and as such should offer just a tiny bit of fertile soil. If the two of them can't handle whatever they discover, we can always send reinforcements, although it looks like in this case mech cluster might be a tiny bit generous. Nightshade then also comes down with the flu, but that's nothing we won't be able to handle. And I'd say the same applies for the enemy mechanoids here. However, before we attack, let's plant that harbinger seed to sprout a young harbinger tree, but even that is sufficient to give us the last remaining entity codex entry. Now we will sadly not see it in action, but harbinger trees can be fed using corpses. In turn, they will produce twisted meats and bioferrite. I made a short on that a while back that you can watch if you're interested in learning more. Now, regarding the mechanoids, I think we won't even need to bother with them at all, as our only task is taking out the psychic suppressor inside the building here, and getting inside does not necessarily require getting past the mechanoids. So, here we are, we've got ourselves an entry point. At this point, Elpis can fire away while staying out of the proximity detector's radius, and it seems like the psychic suppressor getting damaged does not bother the mechanoids in any way, shape or form. And there we go, that was much smoother than the first mech cluster. We can now consider this one defeated as well, and have even earned an ideology development point, since this technically classifies as a raid. Taking out the rest of the mechs is not necessary, so let's simply fast skip back home. Back home, we then use Kojiro's unnatural healing abilities on Karen, who suffered some brain damage last episode after being part of a chronophagy ritual to make Nightshade younger. Thankfully though, Kojiro can quickly remove that. Afterwards, he can climb down into the pit gate, where he will now fence in the Dreadmelt. We've got mineral veins all over the place, including a small uranium vein, and the Dreadmelt seemingly likes to wander, so I think it's best if we contain it. And well, with the Dreadmelt carelessly stumbling into a smaller tunnel here, that's easily achieved. The next event then, the arrival of a group of rare thrumbos, so it's definitely ups and downs in today's episode. Either way, with Lifterbot Frelock beginning to carry steel from the pit gate onto the surface, we go hunting. It shouldn't be too difficult to take the thrumbos down with the kind of weaponry that we have, and our 4 remaining ghouls have all recovered as well to keep our shooters safe. For the last creature, the 4 of them will even go all in by themselves, just to test how quickly they can take it down, and, well, surprise surprise, it doesn't take long. So, despite the loss of Midnight, the Ghoul Police still a force to be reckoned with. Shortly after then, somewhat unexpectedly, it's Corinna's birthday. Now 7 years old, the daughter of Ellie and Volek can pick some passions and a trait, and to make this decision, let's look at her parents first. Both Ellie and Volek possess passions and high skill levels in shooting, intellectual, and construction. In fact, both for Ellie and for Volek, those 3 are their highest level skills. And, well, coincidentally, those 3 skills can also be selected here with Corinna, so let's do so. At this point, there are no glaring holes we need to fill skill-wise, so we can roleplay a bit more. For her trait then, Body Modder would be an easy mood raiser, but would otherwise be redundant. Industrious is of course always great to have, but I think let's spice it up a little. With both parents being avid gunslingers, let's go trigger happy, a trait that I usually don't use much, but what can I say, I just enjoy the mental image of a trigger happy 7-year-old. By the way, with all of that steel coming to the surface here, Colony Wealth has in fact reached the 350,000 silver mark required for the Arconexus ending. The only thing still missing is complete study of the Grand Architect structure, but we're on a good path there too. For now, a bulk goods trader demands our attention, and as our lead trader, Ellie is making quite the deal here, purchasing all of their regular and advanced components in exchange for some leathers, 3 kidneys, a lung, a heart and a liver, and a few old clothing items. And spoiler alert, selling that hearts will come back to bite us. In the meantime, Ghoul J receives 2 power claws, just like Brock and Arbuzek before him, and a short while later another trade ship passes by, although this time we are only purchasing a death rest capacity serum so that we can construct a second glucosid pump for Vulek. Then it's time for another skip abduction. The loss of Midnight will need to be recouped, of course, so let's hope that we can bring in someone suitable. And indeed we can. His title of Berserker already seems very promising, and being a Neanderthal with the strong melee damage and robust genes makes this guy a very intriguing candidate. We could modify him even further, but honestly, for the most part I think he already has everything we need, so let's give him the usual treatment, plug him into the gene extractor for 1 round, perhaps some psychic rituals afterwards, and then we'll turn him into a ghoul. Our lifter bots, meanwhile, are being resurrected 1 at a time, and as you can see, we're also doing some more construction work. What looks like a wall reinforcement is simply going to be a 1-tile room increase, however, to be followed by a few new rooms on top of that. From our abductee, we then extract the robust gene, very useful, but already in our collection, I believe. So up next, let's have his brain scanned for a subcore. One of the new rooms we then construct is a hospital. Considering how much emphasis our colony puts on body modifications, it is honestly a little weird that we haven't had one until now, so let's fix that. With construction underway, we also drag our prisoner into a chronophagy ritual to rejuvenate Kojiro. In hindsight, we should have gone all out here. Now Kojiro only reverts back to his early 40s. The hospital, meanwhile, is quickly taking shape. We've left some room for a few other facilities in there too. More on that in just a moment. For now, another psychic ritual comes to a successful conclusion, just as a plasteel meteorite crashes on the sea ice. So, one more job, I guess, for Mulch Butler once the uranium one has been mined out, while our poor Neanderthal, who already had a lung and a kidney removed too, is not in the clear just yet. Elpis needs to boost his psi focus, and a little brain damage is a fair price to pay, I'd say. So let's get another ritual going. This time we're aiming for maximum quality to make the bonus last as long as possible, 2 entire years in this case. A crashed escape pod then offers an unexpected chance to perhaps acquire yet another ghoul, as its occupant is from an enemy faction, and an Itakin, another melee-focused xenotype that too possesses the strong melee damage and robust genes. While Nightshade runs out to make sure we bring him in alive, a cargo pod gives us some food and a steel slag chunk, and shortly after the psychic ritual is complete, now nothing is left to do but to turn the abductee into a ghoul. Our mechanoid facilities receive a slight overhaul too. The added space allows us to place a second small gestator in here, so that resurrecting lifters goes a bit quicker. They do tend to go down from time to time. The ghoul transformation is then also complete and chosen from the list of channel supporters in the naming rights tier and above. Bert joins the Ghoul Police. Welcome and apologies for the treatment so far. By the way, Bert is actually both a Patreon supporter and a channel member, so thank you very, very much for that. I'm glad that Lady Luck chose you to join the series. Now, for the next 2 days, Bert will remain unconscious due to previous procedures, but we've got a new candidate coming in, an 84-year-old pirate Itakin. Since all psychic rituals are still on cooldown though, he is safe for the moment, and we've got bigger things to worry about anyway, as the corrupted obelisk finally springs into action and duplicates Ellie. Yes, this is what it does. It clones people who interact with it, simple as that. I think it's very fitting that Ellie, one of the founders of this colony, was selected. Now we've got 2 of her, and you saw it earlier, her skill set is pretty damn good, not to mention that Vulek might enjoy this too. Could get a bit confusing for Corinna though, now having 2 mothers, because everything about this Ellie is identical to the original, including her friends and family. Now, I've named her Ellie 2 for the time being, but I'd be open to picking a slightly more creative name from the naming rights tier for this one too. Let me know whether you think that's appropriate here. The action also keeps moving, now with Kojiro suffering a mental break that I had been waiting for several episodes already. He has the Void Fascination trait, and as such will eventually have a mental break during which he attempts to free all entities. And as much as the rest of the colony shares a fascination for the void, it is perhaps more from an academic standpoint. So to send a clear message, we'll have Elpis himself imprison Kojiro now, but only for our unnatural healer to be released shortly after. His production specialist role is now gone, but we can fix that. First of all, though, we construct a few neural superchargers. These devices can only be used once every 24 hours, but for transhumanists they are in high demand, as each use boosts a pawn's consciousness and learning rate, albeit at the cost of slightly higher food consumption. That's not really a problem, at least not compared to the supercharger's power draw. 400 watts per device, so to sustain our colony of 10, or 11 if we count Ellie twice, that's at least 4000 watts just going here. So, might be time to capture a few more entities for that sweet bioferrite to keep our generators running, but for now we overhaul our Ascension Chamber, our ideology ritual room. While we do, we are also informed that we have now unlocked the atmospheric heater, and thus have completed every last anomaly study project, a goal of mine when I set out to record this series. After all, I am still a completionist. This also means that we no longer need to study any of our captured entities, which will free up some research time to spend on other stuff, like Ultra Mech Tech for example, which we still need to unlock. What follows are a tedious few hours laying down hex tiles in our new Ascension Chamber, plenty of time to make a decision that might perhaps be a bit controversial. Last episode we received this quest here, with several intriguing rewards. However, while I was initially tempted by it, the two side trainers here could only be used by Elpis, and he already knows invisibility, a Masterwork Eltex shirt we actually have in our storage room, uranium we have found more than we'll ever need during the last two episodes, and the two implants are, well, not bad, but more situationally useful. So why not go with the throne as many of you suggested? Well, it's certainly not because I don't want a throne, but simply because I don't think this series will run long enough to actually see it. You see, we would only get a reward after housing the Imperial prisoner for 24 days, and that is almost half an in-game year. Not to mention that on top of that, we would also need to accept and defeat another mech cluster, and also need to feed and house 11 Imperial cataphracts. So I have decided that we will simply decline the quest, and that we will instead build a throne ourselves. More on that later. For now we extract the robust gene yet again from our Itakin prisoner, and that's also about the only thing we needed from him, so let's begin the usual procedure, harvest a lung and a kidney, and then begin the ghoul infusion. While all of that is underway, we also learned something about Ellie's clone. Seems like she's suffering from organ decay, so the duplication was not entirely without side effects. And this is why I said earlier that selling that heart would come back to bite us. It would be very handy to have a spare one now. Now, 2 kidneys and a lung, we have those, but a heart might need to be artificially made. Let's take things one step at a time though. We have a new ghoul now, and that means a name to give out. This time it was chosen from the YouTube channel members. Congratulations to CJ for being picked as the 6th member of the Ghoul Police. And that Ghoul Police will go into combat soon, as we have received a quest that I think we will accept. A crashed shuttle is being chased by pirates, and we can get some Eltex gear and silver out of it. We're skipping the Eltex staff here, since Elpis should have a gun on him at all times, and the colonist is nothing spectacular. So, with Nightshade beginning to replace the decaying organs of Ellie's doppelganger, let's accept the quest. These ones are always a bit messy, since combat needs to be fought out in the open, but I think we'll manage. The shuttle lands, and we send almost the entire colony over to help out, including CJ, who goes on his first adventure with the rest of the ghouls. Then the pirates arrive, and they're pretty much in attack range immediately, which is not exactly ideal, considering that we've got 2 Doomsdays and 1 triple rocket launcher among them. But I assume Elpis has learned from the best what to do in these situations, skip in and cast Berserk Pulse. Apart from the ghouls, everyone from our side has also moved back a bit to stay safe. I'd rather lose the quest due to a stray Doomsday than half of our people. With the enemies incoming, the ghouls then rush forward, backed up by the soldiers that came with the shuttle. Like I said, it's a bit messy, but we look to be in good shape here. It seems like we even get lucky and both doomsdays were dropped during the initial berserk pulse, but our enemies remain resilient. Despite more than half of their force already down or dead, they keep fighting and kill Ghoul J, but this time there's no fire to be seen, so unlike Midnight, he should be able to return. One more kill then and the pirates finally flee, leaving behind plenty of valuables as well as a prisoner to capture. This prisoner will not be healed or turned into a ghoul though. Instead, we simply rip out his heart to give it to clone Ellie. The guy is a body modder after all, so he should understand. Ghoul Resurrection Serum in hand, Nazim meanwhile brings Jay back to life, or whatever you call it for a ghoul, while Ellie number 2 receives her brand new and still freshly beating heart to cure her organ decay for good. And with that, I think it's time that we utilize our brand new Ascension Chamber for a leader speech from Elpis. The colony needs to be prepared for what comes next, now that we have completed both the Entity Codex and all Anomaly study projects. Activating the Void Monolith is next on the list, and that could make the next few days pretty intense. But it looks like Elpis found some encouraging words to lead his people into this final challenge, and we're not done with the rituals yet. Kojiro also gets back his role as production specialist in a short ceremony attended by Elpis, the kids and the slaves. Afterwards, Elpis uses his Word of Inspiration psycast on Kojiro, and that results in exactly what I had been hoping for, a creativity inspiration. This stacks with his production specialist role for an increase of 3 quality levels to whatever he makes next, and despite a construction skill of only 7, that will be our very own Grand Meditation Throne, not made from jade though, but from plasteel in true high-tech fashion. Now, it'll take a little while to get this finished, enough time for Vulek to complete another major milestone. The Grand Architect structure has finally been fully studied. We've had people working on this pretty much 24/7, and in fact, we now have everything we need to complete the Arconexus ending as well as the Anomaly ending. And since both can be experienced in one playthrough, that is exactly what I have planned to end this series on. Not much else happens then for the next few hours. We gestate another lifter bot to help with hauling, especially down in the pit gate. Its name will be Hasky, chosen from the list of patron supporters in the naming rights tier and above. Then Kojiro already finishes his work on the throne, and thanks to inspiration and roll, he does in fact manage to make it a legendary work. Sadly though, one that we cannot really use apart from looking at it, since meditating at a throne requires a royal rank, and no one in our colony has one. Still, let's celebrate the construction of this wondrous artifact with a Pendrothian party that ends up being a fun affair, and a fitting send-off into the next episode, in which we will activate the monolith and begin the Anomaly endgame. Until then, we've got some fan art, quite a bit of it actually. To start off with, we've got a depiction of the ever-popular Ghoul Police by Extreme Reward that I think requires little explanation, perhaps unlike the next 2 pieces, which were sent in by Travis S. and are callbacks to Maniac's early time in the tropical rainforest, where he spent a lot of his days soloing rhinos. Not a lot is left of that nowadays. So thank you to both of you for the amazing artwork. I actually have a few things lined up for the grand finale that I hope you will enjoy too. In the meantime, if you'd like to send me some more of your submissions, then feel free to send an email to pete@petecomplete.com. And with that, let's make the cut for today. As always, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave. And with that, let's make the cut for today. As always, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.